In God, we live and have our being. In God, we live and have our being. Now that's a wonderful saying by one of the old prophets. You know, very few of us today ever read the words of the prophets. We've got all the computers, haven't we, and all the good games and the computers for the children to play with. We don't read what the prophet said. Now our error is in making the prophets historical. We know they were the basis of the Western culture is the Jewish religion, and the prophets that I'm speaking about were of the Jewish culture, historically thousands of years ago. But who cares about that they were of the Jewish religion? The fact is, or the truth is, in what they say. It's like Jesus. Now there's a historical figure that has made many, many people on earth very, very unhappy and has caused many, many terrible wars and persecutions. And that's supposed to be God as man. And that's not true. That's historical, you know. On the cross, doesn't matter that much. How he lived doesn't matter that much. Nothing of that matters. It's historical. It's a story. We love stories. We love little fables, and we love true stories as much as anything can be true that we recite. So the thing is to get rid of the historical in your lives. Like when you were born, to be attached to it. Of course we have to have these. We are historical creatures. We have to have them. But the thing is not to be attached to the history of things. You can see the history of things, and that's a part of us which is very interested in history in various ways. Not just the history of history, but the history of people, history of things. That's in us. But we don't have to be attached to it. And that's what we do. We're attached by remembering. We remember all these old bodies of knowledge or knowing that we have in us. And therefore they come and they haunt us. They come back as thought and thinking and worry and doubt and fear. Whereas when we stop remembering them, we start to enter a place of, well, something like now, where there's no history in now. There's no past in now. It's now. So going back to one of the old prophets said, in God we live and have our being. What does this mean? Well, first of all, it's essential to define God, isn't it? We can't assume that everybody's got the same idea of God. As a matter of fact, there's a million different ideas of God, and they're all wrong. So we've got to get the truth, because I'm a prophet now, you see, and I can explain anything that the prophets have ever said, but down to our cultural terms. In our cultural terms, which means the computer terms, you know, the send a man to the Mars terms, right up to the moment terms, which the prophets didn't know about, didn't have that. They just had, when you mentioned God, they knew what God was as an inner state inside of them. So I'm going to define God for you so that we don't get the wrong idea. In God, we live and have our being. So what is God? Now God is the sunlight coming through the screens there. God is the space between you and me. God is the sea that you've all seen this morning. God is the blue sky today, and God is the clouds lying on the side of the horizon. God is the horizon. God is the trees outside. God is the grass that you walk on. God is the whole of planet Earth. God is all the stars that you will see tonight. God is the cold of the day and the warmth of the cold of the night and the warmth of the day. God is the wind. God is every single possible thing. The space between you and me now, the speaker and you, your body, is God. So I trust you're getting some idea of what it is in God, in everything that our senses can perceive or think of, or anything, that is God. That's how vast this is. So in God we live. Okay, we're sitting here in God now. And inside of us, of course, is God. And outside of us is the sensory projection of God as the lights and everything around us, and everything is around us. In God we live. Right. And have our being. Now we live in a body. Our body lives, doesn't it? So our body lives in God. But what do you mean by in God? Well, what they really mean is, in God's mind, I live and have my being. I being inside that body there. In God's mind. So I'm talking about God's mind, aren't I? I live in God's mind. So all that I just described, the sea, the wind, the space between us, the grass and everything, this is all in God's mind. The lights here is in God's mind, everything. And so is your body in God's mind. So your body lives and has, and you have your being in God's mind. Now this being is not, of course, projected, is it? I live as a body in God's externalized, projected, objectified mind. But where's this being? In God I live as a body, and in God's mind I have my being. Now the being is separate. It's not an object, is it? Being is not an object like your body that walks around in my body. Being is inside. So there's God projected outside as the sensory appearance of everything. That's God's mind. And there's the state of God's mind within us, which is the state of being. Now, in the projection in God's mind, everything is moving. It has been made that everything must move. Nothing may stand still. Even the tree has got movement in it. Everything has got movement. Nothing can be stopped. You can't stop moving. I can't stop moving. Whatever's inside of me is still moving. Everything's moving. But in the state of being, in God's mind within me, nothing moves. This is the source. The state of being is the source of God's projected world. It all comes out of being, which is motionless, still, silent, wonderful for its stillness and unmoving presence, glorious because of that.